Elsewhere now, former U.S. President Donald Trump has confirmed his status as the front-runner for the Republican presidential nomination after winning the New Hampshire primary, the contest where the state's party selects its candidate. Republican candidates Donald Trump and Nikki Haley went head-to-head in the New Hampshire primary on Tuesday. With 90% of the vote counted, Mr. Trump leads Nikki Haley, his last remaining rival in the Republican nomination race, by 12 points. During his victory speech, Mr. Trump called Ms. Haley an imposter who had been beaten so badly. This comes after the ex-president won a landslide in Iowa's caucuses last week. Mrs. Haley has vowed to fight on with her campaign and to take her bid to become the Republican Party's presidential candidate back home to South Carolina, the state where she served as governor. The next significant primary contest is February the 24th in South Carolina.
If you take a look throughout the history of our country, if you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of this not great country right now, it's a country in decline. It's a troubled country. It's a failing country, frankly. But if you took the 10 worst presidents and put them together, the 10 worst, absolutely 10 worst. I used to say 5. Remember, I'd say 5. Then I said, wait a minute, we can add another 5. They would not have done the damage that crooked Joe Biden has done. And just a little note to Nikki. She's not going to win. She's not going to win. But if she did, she would be under investigation by those people in 15 minutes. And I could tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons. A little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about, but she will be under investigation within minutes. We'll head out to South Carolina, where I think we're going to win easily. I think we're 50 points up, 5-0. 5-0, 50 points up on a person that was governor. That tells you something.
Well, our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now for more on this. Hi, Maria. First, how many reactions do we have to this big win by Donald Trump?
Well, this was predicted. And so I think many were not surprised to see this big win in New Hampshire. And so it is, I think, one of the areas that the Biden administration has expected. And we saw today that President Biden's campaign manager and several others on his team held a press conference to discuss and respond to the big win. And obviously they are pushing forth the notion and the efforts and the communication to their supporters that this is not a time to be fearful. This is a time to know that the White House should definitely stick with President Biden in the future. And so they are aware of what's occurred. And it's one that I think many Americans are not surprised about, but there are some that are very, very concerned about the future of our country. But in a few polls and in small interest groups last evening, you could see an overwhelming support by Republicans for the former president.
And I believe everyone would be asking the big question, which is what's next for former U.S. President Donald Trump?
Well, as he said, he is looking to head down to South Carolina. He's looking for another win there in just a few weeks. We also know that we're continuing to see the court cases arise. We're also continuing to see that many states are trying to figure out if it's constitutional for him to even be on the ballot. So we can expect to see this dragging out as far as his eligibility to be president all the way until November. It's highly likely that we will potentially see this even hit the Supreme Court as we get down to past the primaries. And we are talking about the general election, because as we know, we've seen Governor DeSantis has stepped down. And really at this point, the only contender against him is Nikki Haley. And we know that she did not show victory in New Hampshire, and it's predicted that she will see a decline in support over the next few months.
And despite all those legal suits and indictments that you speak about against Mr. Trump, it's clear that his supporters are loyal to him. But many perhaps wonder if Nikki Haley stands a chance in South Carolina, where she's been governor, and she has vowed to fight on.
Yes, you're correct. And there was a small interest group that was collected of Republicans yesterday evening. And it was reported out that it was about 80% of those individuals were supporting Trump, even though she was governor in South Carolina. And some even felt that, a few felt that maybe her governorship was not one that they were proud of. And these were Republicans in her party and individuals who were showing greater support for the former president than their own governor. So it's going to be very interesting. And I think South Carolina will give us a clear indication as to what we could be seeing as we move forward with these primary elections, especially as we look at the Republican Party.
And as it stands now, the lineup would be between U.S. President Joe Biden, of course, Donald Trump, setting up a rematch of the 2020 presidential race. All eyes are on this elections. Millions all over the world, of course, will also be glued to their screens, as we've done in previous elections in the U.S. What should we expect, and what could play out differently this time?
Well, it's going to be, honestly, I think many Americans are looking at watching a reverse. They are looking at watching a rewind tape of what we saw in 2020, as you stated. This is not very common in the U.S. where you see this type of potential rematch. Especially one of the things that has been brought up is the factor that these are two individuals that are similar in age-wise. That has obviously been brought up, and Nikki Haley was definitely criticized for bringing up that factor. And so when you talk about some of the elements that make this very interesting, I think that Americans are a bit concerned, to be very honest, about what could happen when we get to November. We all know about the January 6th attacks. We are aware of how that played out in American history and how devastating it was. So to think we're going to have a rematch of the 2020 election potentially, I think causes many for a bit of concern. And not only the Democratic Party, but also the Republican Party, those who might not be supporters of the former president.
Right. Many thanks, Maria. And still ahead on the program, we bring you an exclusive interview with the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, as he speaks with Chairman of Channel C Media Group, Dr. John Momoh, on U.S.-Nigeria relations. Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has praised American-Nigerian relations as stronger thanks to the establishment of the American corner across the country. Mr. Blinken made the comments as he commissioned the 26th American corner in Nigeria, hosted by the 21st Century Technologies in Lekki, Lagos. He says Nigeria holds the highest number of American corners in any nation, providing Nigerians the opportunity to study in the U.S. and enhance relations, among other benefits.
The future really is with Africa. It's no secret to anyone that in the coming years, 1 in 4 inhabitants of this planet will be from this continent. And so we would ignore Africa at our peril. But we also see the incredible power in these partnerships in actually solving problems together. And when we're thinking about Africa, Nigeria has to be front and center. The largest country, the largest economy, the largest democracy. It is a natural partner for the United States. And as we're looking at what we're doing together, trying to address the climate crisis that's affecting all of us in different ways, developing artificial intelligence for good, accelerating inclusive economic growth, all of that is strengthened powerfully by one thing, and that is the tens of thousands of Americans who are here in Nigeria, working, studying, coming together with Nigerians around joint ventures, and the more than 500,000 Nigerian Americans who are such a powerful part of our own community. This place, this American corner in Lekki, will, I believe, reinforce that incredibly vibrant relationship between our countries and between our peoples. You heard it from Will. Nigeria has more American spaces than any other African country. 24 locations in 21 cities, 4,400 programs, reaching 100,000 Nigerians every year, and now number 25. We know that there are so many other Nigerians, like each and every one of you, who want to make connections, who want to acquire skills, who may want to spend time in the United States, studying, working, engaging with people. And there are many ways to do that, but these American spaces are a big part of it.
Well, the U.S. Secretary of State spoke some more, but exclusively with the Chairman, CEO, Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momoh, on Nigeria-U.S. relations. Dr. Momoh began by asking Mr. Blinken his thoughts on the AFCON match in Cote d'Ivoire on Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us in spite of your very busy schedule. As an opener, how were you able to sit through the match in Ivory Coast?
Well, first, I'm a lifelong football fan, so it was incredibly exciting to be there, and also just to see the remarkable job that our friends in the Ivory Coast did in bringing everyone together for the Cup of Nations. But I was sitting with some friends and colleagues from the Ivory Coast, and it was a bit of a tough match for the Elephants. So I was being very sympathetic to that, but mostly I just felt the excitement in the stadium, the excitement of the game, and the excitement of people coming together throughout the continent and well beyond. There are a lot of Americans who travel to the Ivory Coast to see the tournament. It's just a reminder of how powerful sports is in connecting people across geography, across language, across culture. That's really what was so exciting about it.
That was good. After the first goal, I'm sure you thought, they were equalized, but they never did.
Well, yeah, and then when the Ivory Coast goal was disallowed for offsides, I think it deflated them a little bit. But look, anyway, young players, incredibly talented.
Absolutely.
They'll be back, and there's so many other great teams involved. Of course, Nigeria.
Good. That's history now, but welcome to Nigeria.
Thank you.
Schedule here to Africa is hectic, very tightly packed, and this is the second time within 10 months that you're here. I told you just a moment ago that I'll soon start calling you brother.
That would be an honor. Thank you.
In any way, you come in here twice within 10 months on the heels of other senior level U.S. government officials.
That's right.
And Mr. President Biden said, we're all in enough on Africa. That's right. At the last summit. And he promised to come. Doesn't this visit fall short of the fact that the commitment by the president, since it was unfulfilled, is putting Africa lower on the priorities list of U.S. African foreign policy?
I think it's just the opposite. As you mentioned, of course, the president very much wants to come to Africa. Beyond that, though, as you mentioned, I think we've had 17 cabinet level or department level officials come since the Africa Leaders Summit. And one of the things President Biden was so intent on is we had 3 great days in Washington with the Africa Leaders Summit. But he wants to make sure that the 362 days that follow those 3 days to make up the year, we're focused and engaged here. And there's a certain simple reason for it. For the United States, we see Africa as a continent that's shaped our past, it is shaping our present, and it will for sure shape our future when we have 1 in 4 people on this planet soon to be coming from Africa. And when we have with Nigeria in particular, the continent's largest country, its largest economy, its largest democracy, there's a natural partnership. That's why I'm back to follow up on the commitments that were made at the Africa Leaders Summit by the president and to strengthen and deepen the partnership that we already have.
How does the State Department plan to strengthen diplomatic relations with Nigeria in the context of increasing global competition for influence in Africa?
You know, look, first there are tremendous needs and opportunities that no one country is going to be able to meet by itself. We make very significant investments, often, for example, through the United Nations as well as through other programs, in health security, the PEPFAR program, which has been one of the greatest things that we've done, and it's had a big impact here in Nigeria. For food security, working on combating climate change, given the impacts that it has. We're investing in infrastructure, and we see that, for example, in something the president has established, the Libido corridor that will join up Zambia, the DRC, and Angola in creating physical and digital infrastructure. But here's the biggest difference maker, I think. The United States also, and maybe uniquely, invests in knowledge, in transferring knowledge, in sharing techniques, in sharing understanding, so that countries that we're partnered with can then do it themselves and aren't dependent or reliant on us or anyone else. So it's that investment in knowledge that I think is one of the most powerful things we do. Here in Lagos, we just opened our 25th American Corner in Nigeria, the most of any country in Africa. And this is a place where people can come not only to connect to the United States, but also to learn, to develop skills, whether it's English language skills or technology skills, to build their knowledge.
So this is laudable investments in products for Africa. But did the US wait to see China and Russia, taking the bull by the horns and coming in first before it served as a wake-up call?
Look, this is not about, for us, it's not about China, Russia, or any other country. It really is about the partnerships that we see as offering tremendous opportunity, not just for our African partners, but for us. Look, the reality is none of the problems that we're trying to solve for the American people can we solve alone. None of the challenges that we have to face for the American people can we effectively meet alone. We need to be doing this in partnership. I saw just here in Lagos some young Nigerian entrepreneurs, innovators, who are finding answers to problems that we also have in the United States. The more you're able to connect people together in that way, the better it's going to be for all of us. So we're not engaged here because of any other country. We're engaged here because of the opportunity that we see to strengthen partnerships and to actually meet our common challenges. And it's a natural for us, in part because of history. But again, when we think of the future, what we think and what we see and what we feel is Africa. And that's why President Biden has made sure that we're focused, even with everything else going on in the world.
A shift in gear now. Let's ask you to speak to us about U.S.-Nigeria security collaborations, especially in combating terrorism and regional stability, which are affecting economic and development efforts in Nigeria.
I think the challenge there is acute, and we can't minimize it, but we're also determined to proceed in partnership with Nigeria in meeting that challenge. Now, it has to be, and I believe it is, a comprehensive approach. Of course, there's the hard security part of this, and so things that we're doing in terms of building capacity in Nigeria among the security forces, the military, equipment, technology, intelligence, information sharing, all of those kinds of things are very important. But also important is taking a comprehensive approach if you're really going to be effective, for example, in dealing with extremism or terrorism. The relationship between security forces and the communities that they're supposed to be protecting is critically important. Making sure that the forces are there looking out for the people, not enabling or doing bad things to the people. That's hugely important. Making sure that we're also looking at some of the root causes that may be pushing people or driving people to take up crime or to engage in extremism or terrorism. That's very important too. And that means finding ways to create more opportunity for people throughout the country so that they can have and believe in a future, that they can put bread on the table for their families. Because if you can't do that, if you can't put bread on the table for your kids, you'll probably be willing to do anything in order to accomplish it. It's a long way of saying we have to have, and we do have, a comprehensive approach to this in partnership with the government and in partnership with local communities as well. But the more Nigeria succeeds in developing its economy, pursuing innovation, connecting people, and meeting some of the very serious challenges when it comes to health, when it comes to climate, when it comes to energy, when it comes to food security, those ultimately are the best ways to create the conditions in which extremism, criminality, terrorism doesn't grow.
Let's talk about trade and development issues first. Let's turn our searchlight on energy and environmental policies. Given Nigeria's status as a major oil supplier to the U.S., how is the U.S. engaging with Nigeria on energy diversification and climate change mitigation?
Look, we feel a real responsibility to be a strong partner on the transition to a renewable-based energy economy, because historically we developed in such a way that we did things in our own development that we're now asking other countries not to do because of the impact on the environment. So we have a responsibility to help lead the way. That goes to some of the financing that we're putting into enabling countries to build greater resilience and to adapt. It comes with the technology and innovation that we help develop and we're sharing to make sure that countries can take advantage of technology to move away from fossil fuels. It also comes with an understanding that this is a transition. It won't happen overnight, but there has to be a clear plan and clear support from us and for other countries that have developed their economies in previous years to make sure that we're doing this together. That's the nature of what we're trying to do with Nigeria.
Two more quick questions, because I know you've got to go. You spoke about the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Yes.
Could you expatiate on that for us?
Well, look, one of the things, I think there are a couple of things that are very important. Of course, we want to see trade and investment strengthen between the United States and Africa. And actually, just since the Africa Leaders Summit, we've seen a significant jump in two-way trade and investment, a 60% increase just in that period of time. And partly that goes to the work our own government is doing with the tools that we have to support our private sector in doing more with and in Africa. At the same time, there are things that countries here can do to create the strongest possible investment environment. But there's another aspect to this. I think within Africa itself, making sure that the environment exists, and this is what the free trade area in Africa itself is doing, so that African countries are trading with and investing in each other. You have a very unusual situation historically, where up until now, African countries have done more trade and had more investment outside of Africa than they have within Africa. That should and it is changing, because that's really missing tremendous opportunities. But it also requires connecting countries in Africa. That's why we're also taking a regional approach. I mentioned the Libido corridor before, that will physically as well as digitally join Zambia, the DRC, and Angola. That connectivity is the way you get more trade and investment flowing among Africans and within Africa, as well as maximizing opportunities to bring trade and investment from other countries to Africa. Finally,
Mr. Secretary, what will be your greatest takeaway yet from your trip to Nigeria?
Oh, look, it's in a way the same takeaway I've had on multiple trips here. It's the vibrancy, the energy, the innovativeness of this young population. And that's why when I say for us, Africa's the future, you can see the future is now. It's actually happening right now. And it's especially happening with young people here. Some of the innovators that I met today here in Lagos, who, as I said, are finding creative solutions to problems that are shared around the world. That's what's so incredibly exciting about the partnerships that we're building in Africa. We can see a future where African solutions, African voices are critical and central to everything that's going on around the world. We want to be part of that.
Very well. Secretary Lincoln, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and best wishes on your onward trip.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great to be with you.
My pleasure.
Well, Chairman and CEO of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momoh, speaking exclusively with the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. You can catch this interview again on our flagship news at 10 later tonight, and of course on our website, channelcv.com, and the streams on our YouTube page. That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.